Welcome in, peeps, for another exciting episode. Oh, I'm just coming off of a trip I had a speaking engagement in Texas, in Tyler, Texas. And I am still catching up on sleep and laundry and all the things. I had to clean out a spare room that we had do you guys ever have that one room that just becomes a junk room? Like you just keep accumulating things in there. And that's kind of what I did. I knew we were going to clean out this room. So I started saving boxes from other things that we had ordered because I needed to box up some books. Interesting. So I have lots of books. Not surprising because I'm a writer, right? And then I have a ton of writing friends, and I buy their books, they buy my books, they recommend books. Then I'm in other master classes and they recommend books, and there's authors in there that they have a book. And so it accumulated to quite a lot of books. And I still had books left over from my pre-Christian days when this is where my love of books came from. Was I loved to read. The one thing with me that was always a constant in my life that I think saved my life was I loved to read a good romance novel or a mystery novel to take me away to a different place. It helped my imagination go to different places to get me out of the places where I was currently in my life. So I had a full range of Sidney Sheldon books, Danielle Steele, Patricia Cornwell, John Grisham. The list goes on and on. All the Oprah picks, which I never even read half of those books. It was kind of sad. I started pulling these books out, and I had, I think, 4 or 5 boxes of books that I had either read once, and so I didn't need to read them again, or had not read them at all, because time got away from me, started having kids, that whole thing, didn't have time to read. And it was like, someday I'll get to those books, someday. And so just so happened, I started cleaning things out. Now I have a lot of therapy books and, like I said, books from other authors, things like that. So they're more poignant to what I'm studying and what's going on in my life. However, I will say I still love a good mystery book. And there is one author that I love that writes the best mystery books. And she's not a Christian author, but her books are just really good mystery books. They're not salacious. They're just really, really good if you love a good suspense story. Mary Kubica. Oh, so good. She has really good books. So I kept her books because I read another one. I had read it, I think, like, I don't know, 3 years ago or something. And I pulled it out again, and I had forgotten I had read it, and I started reading it again, and it was still as good as the first time. I had forgotten what was going to happen at the end. So I enjoy just escaping to that place again. But it brought me to the subject today of, I get asked this question all the time. How did you get started writing your book? And how did you get to a place where you felt safe writing your story? And so it caused this question to be asked of you is, do you have a calling to write your story? People always want to know, like, take me to the beginning. Like, how did this start? It's hysterical because this was not in my wheelhouse at all. As many of you know, I did not get to finish school, and so I am not educated, but I've always been a good reader, and I've always done well in English. And I have a huge belief that, having a diploma doesn't make you smart. It makes you consistent. And so I think it's a really good thing to get in higher education. But I ended up getting my education through different night classes and things like that. And then later on when I started writing, I started getting my education through writing conferences, and then coaching arena, I started getting certifications, which those required tests also. And so tests and presentations. And so I realized that, God had equipped me to go in this direction. But, people just want to know from the beginning, like, how did that start? And also, is there a craving for you to tell your story? Or have people been asking you or telling you like, hey, you have a really good testimony, you should be telling your story? So I recently again got asked this question, and also I'm being interviewed on a podcast on Friday, and that was one of her questions is, how did you get started writing your book and telling your personal testimony, telling your story? And so it always brings me back to the beginning, and it just makes me smile of how it all started. It really was, a God path. It just, there's no other explanation because, like I said, this was not in my wheelhouse at all. I've always loved to write and read, but I had no inclination of like, someday I'm going to be an author and a speaker and all the things. And so it came about very organically. So there's a couple things I want to ask you guys too as we go along. I want you to think about this when I'm telling my story. I want you to think about for you, if this is something that, if your heart is pounding right now as I'm saying this, you probably need to investigate of whether it's time for you to tell your story, write your story, share it with the world. First of all, do you have an aspiration to write your story? And should you write your story? Are you healing from your own story to be able to tell it? Or are you in the middle of just a big mess and you're just wanting to tell your story because you need to get it out? But are you ready to like really write a book about it? Or do you need to wait a little bit longer? So let's answer some of those questions and find out if this is something that you want to do. So like I said, I just always smirk when people ask this question, like, how did you know when you wanted to write a memoir? And the quick answer is that I didn't. Had no idea, didn't want to do it, fought it for a long time. I would laugh when people would say, your story is incredible. You need to write your story. I would also get this comment of like, how are you so normal? All these crazy things happen to you. And I would look at them and go, I'm not normal. I have a whole bunch of things that go on in this crazy head, but I work really hard to keep myself intact so that I don't go crazy. But it really comes down to this, is God chose me to do this. That's just the easiest answer. He orchestrated this whole thing like 25 years ago. I started sharing my story bit by bit in those little Wednesday night small group women's Bible studies at my old church. And I would share just a little tidbit about, something shocking that happened and just trying to like work through some things. And it was pertinent to whatever topic we were talking about. And people would look at me and they're like, you should write a book. Like, this is incredible. You went through what? And to me, it didn't seem that incredible. It was more of an embarrassment and a shame. Like, I didn't look at it as something so different. I just was like, I know I'm different because I know I don't have, when I would hear other women talk about the beautiful relationship they had with their moms, I would just feel left out. I was like, I don't have that experience. I don't know what that feels like. I'm taking care of my mom. At that point, I was taking care of my mom. So I would laugh at them when they would say, you need to write a book. I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Okay. And then I would, kind of joke around and say like, no one needs to hear my crazy story. No one wants to listen to that. And after a while, it started happening more and more. Like every time I would share, people, more than one person was like, this is so good of how God has walked you through these different things. You really need to get this down on paper. So I started kind of dabbling a little bit and writing out my story on some pages. And then I also found that it was kind of helping me process my story a little bit more. And I actually enjoyed writing it, but I was at that point, I was really scared to write my own story. I think that like not everyone is meant to tell their story to the world. I think sometimes I think it's something you have to question. And I think sometimes it's just something you need to share with somebody to help you process through your story. And you have to see if this is something you really want to do and if you're willing to share this, or do you just have a need to like get some stuff out of you? There's a difference. Like my story was so unique in that I did what I was hearing a lot of women talking about the good relationships with their moms, and I kept thinking nobody's talking about when that isn't a good relationship. And in my case, it wasn't a good relationship with my mom. So, why is there nothing out there where people are talking about that? And how do we, as now young moms, handle this situation? So, there was a need for an explanation and maybe some help that I figured my story might help because I was having a pretty good relationship with my girls. And I mean, I wasn't doing it great. I still had a lot of healing to do, but it was way different than the way I grew up. And I was in a really good marriage. And so I wanted people to see like it is possible to change that outcome of where you've come from. So there was a need for that. Also, I need you to know this too. If you're writing your story, if it's more than just you trying to like clear some stuff out in you, maybe you just need to share with a few people. You don't need to write a book. You need to understand if you write a book, it's out there forever. It's out there in the world. It's like on social media. It is out there for everyone to see and read and judge and believe me, as much as I have people saying they love my book, there are occasionally some crazies on social media. I have been called that I'm a victimizer, that all I do is talk about, the same things and I'm playing the victim. And I'm like, actually, no, it's quite the opposite. I'm naming the harm so that we can become stronger. I'm not victimizing anyone or myself. I'm not saying poor me. I have a great life. But, they come at you at all these different angles. I also have had men that have replied to my emails and said, I wish there was a book for men and their mothers because I'm the opposite sex having that kind of I had that kind of relationship with my mom. And I'm like, yes, I hope someday that happens. So we need some male writers to talk about that from their side. And so that will be out there forever. So it's something you have to think about is, do you want this story to be out there forever? And is it going to help, or are you doing a revenge piece? So this is the other part. If you're in the middle of a struggle and you are still angry with the people that have hurt you, whatever your story is, are you doing it for revenge or are you doing it to actually help other people? That's a really good question to ask yourself, because if you're doing it because you're like, I want everyone to know how awful this family member was or this situation was, whatever your memoir is about, if you're doing it for that, I'm going to tell you, don't do it. That's not the right reason to do it. And that is one of the things, like, people were like, there were a couple of the haters, they were like, you're being so mean to your mother. Like, she tried her best. And I'm like, listen, I've said it a million times. I loved my mother, loved her. If you knew how much I took care of my mom, you would know that the love was there. Also the obligation. But to not speak of the harm that was done to me is not doing any good for my mental health, for my body, for my soul. That doesn't help me. And so I'm not going to lie about what the truth was of how it was so hard living with her and violent and everything else. I'm not going to lie about that. And I'm doing that to bring the light to the surface so that we can prevent other people from doing that. So it wasn't to bash my mother. It was to explain Mental illness is a real thing and alcoholism is a real thing, and it damages not only the person doing it, but the family that they're raising. And so I think it's really important for you to look at the whole piece and see, is this something that you're doing to help other people, or is this something that you're doing as a revenge piece because you're still angry? I would say go get help for that first. Figure out where this is coming from, and then see if there's a story within that after you've gone through the healing process to write. In a way, I feel like my book is kind of a love story between this difficult relationship between my mom and I, because at the end of the day, I was the one next to my mother when she was dying. Like, I was the one that told her, I forgive you. That is the piece of the story that people need to hear, is that forgiveness is a beautiful thing. It's not wrapped up, in this couple thing. She never said that to me, but I was able to release that to her. And I think that's the hope of who God is and how he will find something beautiful in the middle of something really messy. And that is the hope that you leave readers with, so that they can feel like, if she can do it, I can do it. And that is what I hear from women, is that your story gave me hope. And so make sure that your story has hope in it, that it has love in it, that it has forgiveness in it, that it has some kind of a conclusion. Not that it's perfect. My life didn't end there. It got a lot more messier after that. But there were things that I understood a little bit more, and I've been able to walk through some really hard times because I started this journey of writing this process out and really digging into my story, which I think is important. So I'll give you some pointers to see if this is something that you want to go through. And hopefully by the time we're done with this podcast, I'll have answered some questions for you, and then you can make a wise decision. I actually also coach others to help them hone in on their memoirs. It's something that I love to do. And so if you need extra help, if you're, like I said, if your heart's pounding and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for her to talk about this, or this is something that's been on my heart and mind, I can't believe she's talking about this, you probably want to delve into seeing if it's time for you to write your memoir. And if you need the extra help, please contact me about setting up a coaching session, because this is one of my favorite things to do. I am certified as a author speaker coach through ASA, which is Advanced Speakers and Writers Association, and I specialize in memoirs. I love to find the hook in a story. I love to direct it into, like, who are the main characters in this. And so all of those things are really great, and I would love to help you with that. So let's go through some questions to see if this is something that you might want to do. So we went through the first one, like, why do you want to write this book? And so, again, is it to help others, or is it to air dirty laundry? Don't do it if it's to air dirty laundry. Do you feel a tug from God, or are you out for revenge? How is your healing from this story? So you will probably be talking on this subject. So this always happens when you write a book, you have to promote it, right? So now people on podcasts are going to say, hey, do you want to come on my podcast and share a snippet from this book? Like, tell us about your book. Let's promote it. You may have churches or retreats that will say, oh, you wrote a book about this subject. Like, we need this speaker. Can you come and speak at this retreat or church on your subject from your book? If you are still getting very teary, so I'm not talking like you shed a little tear. Of course, we all have emotions, right? It's not like I cried in Texas. I started talking about something. It took me right back into that situation. And I started to tear up, and I looked out at the audience and they were crying. And I was like, yeah, this is an emotional part, and that's okay. But if you're sobbing where you can't, like I like shed a tear and then took a breath, took a second, and then I started telling more of this story, because I know where to place that emotion. And I know that emotion happened because it took me back into that moment and my body felt it. So I had to tell myself in that couple of seconds when I took a breath, like, you're here now. You're telling your story. You're not back there. It's okay. And that gave me the tool to move forward and keep telling my story. If you are falling apart and you're like, I can't breathe, this is so emotional, you're probably not ready to share your story yet. You have to go through that whole process. You have to talk about it a million times so that it's not taking you back completely to that place, which is normal. You are going to be sent back. Let me tell you, when I was writing my book, it really is cathartic. It's exhausting, and you may have to take breaks. There are times when there's weeks on end where I'm like, I can't write right now. It's like, it's too much for me. And I just took a break and took a breath and was like, it's okay, I'll get back to it. But that scene, that time in my life was real triggering to me. And there are things you will mourn over this book. You will cry over this book. Like, it's taking you back to places that are harmful or ugly, or and also, you don't need to write every single thing that happened to you. There are so many things I did not share in that book because not the world doesn't need to know every single detail. So please remember that. You're writing a memoir, yes. You don't have to add every single thing. And you want to make sure you're not triggering other people that are reading your book. So I've also had some women that said, I really want to read your book, but I started reading the first chapter and it broke my heart so much and took me back and triggered me. I had to put it down for a minute. And I said, that's perfectly okay. And you shouldn't until you're ready. So memoirs are really hard, like they affect people. So be aware of that. So if you are going to speak on this subject, if you're writing a book, you're going to have to speak on it. So you are not in a healing place if you are like breaking down immensely and you cannot tell your story yet. It means you have some work to do. Are the people in your story dead or alive? So that's some things you want to consider. The reason I was ready to write this book is because by the time I was ready to do it, my mom had passed years before. My mom passed in 2007 and my book came out in 2019. So many years had passed. A lot of time had passed where I had mourned her death. I had, talked to other therapists, like kind of was trying to settle like where that was a crazy ride. Like, whoa, what happened? And now she's gone. And so it was easy to write the story between her and I. Now, here's where it got sticky is there were people that are still alive that are a part of this story. So even though the story was about my mom and I, there were other people involved, siblings, other people that she knew, other people I knew, some jobs that I had, my husband, my kids. I got permission from my girls who were adults by then. And I said, I'm going to be writing about some hard stuff. And here's some of the things. Are you guys okay with that? And they gave me their permission. They're like, Mom, if it's going to help other people, just write about it. And I said, I will leave parts out if it's something that's embarrassing you. I will tell you right now, my abortion story is in there. And I had to ask permission of my daughters because I wanted to be respectful. Because like I said earlier, you don't have to share everything in your story. It's no one's business at the end of the day. Like, nobody needs to know every single detail of your life. If you think it's pertinent, and I think it was for that moment of part of my story, but I asked permission. Like, if you guys are embarrassed by this, I will not put that in there. And they were like, no, if this is going to help people, like, please put it in there. And I was so grateful for that. And also so grateful that I could have the kind of relationship to let my girls know, like, your mom has made some big mistakes and here I am and all the whole mess of me, and they loved me anyway. And so that's a great thing. And that's beauty from ashes right there. So please be sure that you are being respectful of the other people you're writing about. And here's where you need to do your homework. If it's someone that you're writing a story about, so I will say with my siblings, I did not talk about my siblings and their adult life. This is their story. So I talked about a couple things when we were kids and then they were out because their story and their experience with my mom is different than my experience with my mom. And again, the characters are my mom and I. It wasn't about anyone else. I didn't need to throw anyone else under the table. Them, I kept their names. My ex-husband, I changed his name. Other people, the places I work, changed their name. Here's the funny thing. The people that lived in town were like, I know what company you were talking about. I think I know who this person is. But people in different states, people that have never met you, they're not going to know. And it's okay. But change the names so that you don't, because otherwise you're going to have them sign a form and get permission. I showed the book to my sister before I sent it out. I said, are you okay with what I've talked about with us as children? She was. She said, some of this stuff I didn't even remember. And I'm like, well, yeah, you were little. And so it was, made her cry. And so there were people I got permission from. And then there were people who I was like, I'm just going to change the name and we'll leave it at that. The other thing you can do is you can write a fiction book. A fiction book, you can just, and we put a disclaimer in the book. Some names were changed to protect some people, that kind of thing. So there's a lot to think about when you're writing a book, right? And so those are just some things that you want to think, do I want to write a memoir? Do I want to just do a fictional book? And then I can like expound on all kinds of things and make it more dramatic if I want to. Will the person sign a form giving you permission to use their name in the story? If they won't and they're upset about it, you need to think about that. Maybe you need to take them out. If it's the main person, you might need to wait until they're not around anymore, or I don't know, write a fiction book. But those are just really important things when you're writing a memoir, because you are writing about different people's lives too. So even though you want to tell their story, they may not want to hear it. I've also had people from my past that read that book that said, it's all lies. She's lying. None of that happened. I was like, well, you're saying that because you were one of the abusers, but I was like, then go write your own book. And that was my answer to that. Of course, they never said that to me in person. They said it to someone else. Are you willing to pay for services to get your book published? That's a big one. So you're going to have to pay something to get this out there in the world. Can you attend writers or speakers conferences? This is gold. I know a lot of people who don't do that, and their reach is not as big, because when you network with other writers all over the United States, those are the people that are going to help you get that book out there when you get ready to publish. They're going to promote it for you. That's how you get on different podcasts. That's how you get reviews. Like, it is great. So I have a whole network of writer speaker friends that I have built up over the last 7 years. And we are all friends to this day. And every time one of us writes another book, we are all on board to help each other and get that book out there. Can you take constructive feedback from publishing companies, from agents, from coaches to help you be a better writer? And are you willing to do the work to be a good writer? It takes a lot. This is why people don't write books. It's not just write some stuff on a piece of paper and send it out there and whoop, there it goes. Let's just print it out. I mean, you can do that, but it's not going to have the impact if you don't do your homework and listen to the experts and really take in the feedback. If somebody goes, hey, yeah, like this right here, it's a little rough, or maybe you shouldn't talk about this over here. And ultimately, it's your decision, it's your book, but make sure you listen to the experts too, because they know what they're talking about. So just be prepared to take your time in getting your book out there. If you're writing a memoir, there is going to be some trauma stuff that's going to come up. So you're going to need to really take your time and work through some of those things. Allow your body and your mind to rest during those times. If something, hits you hard, like I said, put the book aside for a minute. Let yourself feel that, work through it, journal through it, and just sit with God and ask Him to show you what is important in this story that is like triggering that moment? And is there something more that you need to clear out? And maybe it'll come up, another memory will come up that will be really pertinent to that story. The book, when you write it, is not the end of your story. So many other opportunities arise, like speaking, more books, coaching, podcasting, like so many things. It turned into a whole career for me. And I'm so glad that I listened to God's heart tug. So that is all I have on that. I hope this helped you. If you have always thought about like, how did she write that book? How, like, I may have an interest in writing a book. Please contact me if you need help in just processing some things. I just do one-on-one coaching at a time. Like we could do a couple sessions, one session, 5 sessions. I'm working with somebody right now with their memoir, and we're just taking it a little bit at a time. Like we do a session and then we wait a month and then we do another session. And it is so much fun to get her memoir, like get her little PDF back to me, and I get to read through it, and then we get to break it down, and she sends it back, redone, and it's even better. And it's just an exciting thing to watch somebody grow in this field. And it's something that I would love to help you with. And I hope this answered some questions for you. If you've ever had an inkling or a heart tug that God is saying, hey, maybe your story will help a lot of people. I've never regretted doing it. I still get the biggest smile on my face when people come up and say, your book helped me so much. I'm just like, thank you, Jesus, for, giving me the strength to continue on this journey and be able to help. And so I cheering you guys on from afar. And until next time, I'll see you later, peeps.